Everyone, Christy with Clutter Reduction Junk Removal in Southeast Florida. We are about to head back home from a delivery that we're doing for a repeat client. This morning we went to go do a storage unit job for a repeat client. We thought it was going to be two 10 by 10 storage units, and when we got there we were beholden with the fact that it was actually a 10 by 25 and a 10 by 10. So obviously I wasn't prepared for the much bigger size. So our original game plan was to basically try to encompass the whole 10 by 10 into one trailer load and take a local road to donation and then dump the rest. It's Saturday, so the dump's open until 3 at this specific location. The other ones all close at 12. And then we were gonna go back and basically grab whatever was left. And then if we had to make a third trip, we could have used a 12-foot trailer. And then we can deal with it from there. And then tomorrow I was going to be doing this delivery, which was relocating 5 laundry carts from one laundromat to another that was like 2 hours away from each other. So altogether I drove about 4 hours once I finally get home, and that's a little bit of a road trip. So I'm going to be heading back home soon. It should take me about an hour to get back. But for the storage unit, there's 2 ways that I estimate storage units when it comes to junk removal. The first one is something I just kind of started doing once I got the 14-foot trailer. And the reason why is if you knock off the 4 feet on the length and add it to the width, you now have a 10 by 10 space. And I have 5-foot sides. So I know most storage units that have like the cage at the top are about 8 feet in height, give or take. So I know that a 10 by 10 storage unit, if I were to take a linear plane and stretch it across a 10 by 10 storage unit 5 feet up, I'm going to be left with a 10 by 10 space that has 3 feet in height. So I can say, okay, well, I know for a fact that I can roughly get at least one load in there, and then the remaining 3 feet is probably going to fill up about 3/4 of a truck, give or take. So I know that when I go to quote for a 10 by 10 storage unit, if it's packed floor to ceiling all the way through, I just know it's going to be at least a truck and a half to a truck and 3/4. And I can kind of gauge off of that. And then if I'm doing a 10 by 20, 10 by 30, I just multiply those numbers by 2, by 3, and so on. So that's one way I do it. And I do that when it's like basic numbers like that, like 10, 20, 30. But let's say you're going to do like a 10 by 25, or you start getting into weird numbers where it's like an 8 by 16. I've been to a couple of those. They're not common, but they're weird when they come up, and then it's a little bit harder to do math on it. So another little bit more factual way you could do it would be to calculate the volume of the storage unit and then just compare it to your own truck. So I went ahead and wrote down some examples, basically based off of today. And the way you find volume is you multiply the length by the width by the height. You're going to get a large sum of number, and you're going to divide that number by 27. That's going to give you its cubic yardage. So we talk about you charge, 3-seater couch, 3 cubic yards. That's what you're finding out is the cubic yardage. It's 3 by 3 by 3. So I did 2 truck sizes that I feel like are most common for the most part. I did 4-foot sides only because most dump trailers and most dump trucks have 4-foot sides. I have 5-foot sides. I know some people have 5, some people have 6. I did 4 because it's most typical. So do you recognize that there's a good chance when you're stacking stuff up in your truck, it's always going to surpass the height of your sides? So obviously it won't be quite as specific as the math is kind of presenting. So take that with a grain of salt and kind of work around it. So real quick, a 6 by 12 truck with 4-foot sides is going to give you about 10.5 cubic yards. And that's just if you stopped at the sides, you're not going up. So that's how you should be calculating your cubic yardage. You don't count for the sides going up, you just count for what your truck could encompass if it was like a closed-in trailer. And then a 7 by 14 truck with 4-foot sides is 14.5 cubic yards. So if you're going to do a storage unit job and you have a 10 by 10, 10 by 10 by 8, assuming you have like cage tops, is 800 cubic feet. If you divide that by 27, you get 29.5 cubic yards. So you know, okay, if I'm going there with a 6 by 12 foot truck, I know that it's going to take about 3 loads. It's 2.9 give or take, so just assume 3 loads. If you're going to a 10 by 15, that's 1,200 cubic feet, which comes out to 44.5 cubic yards. That's going to be a little closer to 4 loads, maybe 4.25, give or take. And then if you're going to do a 10 by 20, that's going to be closer to 5.5 loads. If you do a 10 by 30, it's going to be around 8 loads. And that's how you can kind of gauge roughly how much it's going to do so that you could charge appropriately. And then if you had a 7 by 14 foot truck, that's 14.5 cubic yards. So if you did a 10 by 10, it should be about 2 loads. If you did a 10 by 15, 3 loads. The 10 by 20, 4 loads. The 10 by 30, 6 loads. And that's just a quick way to kind of tell your customer, oh, you have a 10 by 30 storage unit? Well, I know I have a 7 by 14 truck, so it's going to take at least 6 loads. And that's assuming it's floor to ceiling. Obviously, if you get there and you have some dips and like half of it in the middle isn't quite as high, or they didn't quite go all the way up to the top in the front because there's a door there, obviously you're going to charge by actual volume of how much it actually takes up. But that would be a good estimator. So you could tell the client it's going to be up to 6 loads, you know, just based off pure volume. And you can explain the numbers to them. If they're like, no way, that wouldn't take that much. It's literally on the paper. It's literally on the paper. Get a calculator out. If you prove me wrong, they'll give you 10% off or something like that. I don't know. So that's another tidbit of info that I do that if I have an odd number storage unit, or maybe I'm using a different truck, for example. Like if I'm using a 15-foot U-Haul, obviously that's not my normal truck. So I'd have to sit there and calculate the yardage. I think it's been a while. I believe a 15-foot U-Haul is 764 cubic feet. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure it's around that number. I'd have to do the math on how many cubic yardage that is. Let's see real quick. I think it's like 20. It might be 31 cubic yards. Maybe. I don't know. I'm tired. I might be all over the place. So you could figure out your math just by doing that. But that's my advice when it comes to storage units. If you want a more factual way of determining estimates, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's literally math. Like, if you're doing a 10 by 10 with a 6 by 12 foot trailer and you're just literally loading it up to the sides, it should not take you more than 3 loads, unless you were either speed packing it and maybe the person in there took their time a bit more filling all the crevices. But at the end of the day, if it fit in there, it should fit in 3 loads in your truck. If it didn't, then you skimped out on the packing. So, just putting it out there. But I'm gonna go home because I need to use the bathroom and this is not gonna help. So, we have an hour drive. There are 2 rest areas along the way. We're going back tomorrow morning at 7:30 in the morning. It's 45 minutes away from us. And I was like, you know what? This isn't too bad though, because when we first got there, there was nobody by the loading dock. So like we got to back right next to the door. 2 hours later, there was like 4 cars in a big ass U-Haul. And I was like, this sucks. Like luckily we were already there, but everyone was like, oh, when are you guys leaving? When are you leaving? I'm like, probably for like another hour. I don't know. Leave me alone. So earlier might actually be better. We can try to get in and out pretty quickly. But I can only really do 1 load tomorrow unless we want to grab the 12-foot trailer. But then that means that I have no room for the rest of the day until Monday morning when I go to the dump. So we'll have to see what happens. But I'm officially going. I'm getting tired again. Start drinking my coffee. But hopefully that helps. If you have another way, I don't know how many ways you could possibly gauge volume, but if you have another way, comment down below. But that's it for me. Bye.